Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month will feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here is your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hi, welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, our guest is Ruth Fearnow. Ruth is a therapist, just like myself, as you all know, I'm a therapist. Her first book is called Therapeutic Mindfulness. It's a synthesis of her decades-long meditation practice and her work as a trauma-focused therapist. As a licensed mental health counselor and certified EMDR, that stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing practitioner. She has identified and embedded the factors necessary for healing into therapeutic mindfulness, a skill to facilitate one's healing journey. And she's silly, I think. I think we should say she's silly. So thank you for being a guest.
Well, you're welcome. I guess most people will be on this on audio, but there's this beautiful imagery about synthesizing, and I'm like making fluid movements and being a little bit silly on video. So
the YouTubers will get to experience that. So anyone listening, you might want to check out YouTube if you want to see some, have a little more entertainment to your show today. So Ruth, I only shared a small part of your bio. So first, thank you for being here. And second, what more do you want to share with our audience about you?
It's funny. I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about my journey. And for some reason, this stuff popped up to share. So, when I was in sixth grade, I knew that I wanted to be a therapist. A psychologist is what I thought it was called at the time, or maybe it was, sixth grade. So it's kind of a funny history because as I got older, now I didn't have parents that were extremely emotionally intelligent and taught you how to deal with feelings. I wasn't especially good at any of that stuff. So I remember about time when I was going to college, I remembered that 10 years ago, I thought I should be a therapist. And I thought about that for about half a second as a major. And I thought about getting close to people's pain and feelings. And I was like, no, why would I have thought that? And I think it took maturing on my own spiritual and emotional journey and just growth. And after a few years, well, for many years, I had the existential crisis trying to figure out what I need to do, what I want to do that means something to me. And then it hit me again around age 26, 27. And I'm like, holy cow. Yeah, I'm going to be a therapist. I mean, it was just clear as day. So it was just kind of a funny thing. And there's my spiritual journey has fed into who I am as a therapist, even though plenty of my clients may not know it. Because when I meet with somebody, it's really about where they're at. But philosophy is about healing, about people having goodness in them. All that comes from the work that I've done, from my growth and from the way that I see people. Because Karen, as a therapist, we're supposed to have that unconditional positive regard is what it's called. People are supposed to be able to share whatever. And we're supposed to be able to not act like they're lovely, but we're actually supposed to be able to view them that way. And that's been a process through my whole life of dropping my judgments and letting go of old hurts, dysfunctions from childhood, core beliefs that came out of that, and growing into loving. So it's been a really interesting path. Life is a trip.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And Ruth, what are you comfortable with sharing? I know we talked before recording that you're very mindful of other, family members and how they may feel. So what about your story are you willing to share or feels comfortable to share today?
And I do appreciate the way you approach that. I don't have a problem sharing like deep stuff. If you're my buddy one-on-one, I'll share all the drama. Mm-hmm. But, to put it in a public forum for me, it's like it's also other people's story and sometimes puts them in a bad and very incomplete light. So I had parents that were fundamentally good people. There were some bad circumstances, but I can tell you that my siblings came out with a whole lot of dysfunction. My family had a lot of dysfunction. I am extremely lucky, though, especially being a therapist, I can tell you, so lucky to learn how much worse it could be. I was never beaten. I was never molested. And they're so disturbingly common. So there are some good things. And at least with one family member out of, 8, I knew that there was love. But there was a lot of hard stuff too. And a really fundamental core belief that I came out of childhood with is I'm alone. Because you have parents, one's working 3 jobs to keep everyone afloat. The other one is depressed. And there's 6 kids. So 8 people total, 6 kids to support. And I think it's easy, especially when there's stuff going on with the siblings, it's easy to come out of there just feeling alone. And also I came out with a core belief, just a very fundamental sense of aggression, that aggression will keep me safe. Aggression will help me get through. We talk about, a lot of people have heard fight or flight. I land on the fight category. And you might not think of it because I'm lighthearted, but when push comes to shove and something's in my face, it's like, oh shoot, we got to fight. So
let's go. Yep.
Yeah. So some people need to bring themselves up and stand up. But for me, it's over. So, it's over into the fight area. So learning that it doesn't have to be that way, that I have plenty of resources, and that this I'm alone thing that hits with families after my family. So I had the way I saw it when I was in my 20s was, well, my first family failed. Like that was a failed experiment. I don't have anybody, right? That changed a bit, but that's kind of where I was. So I had some really good friends that were like family. And then I got married, and that family seemed really nice on the surface, but it was kind of a closed family system. So, you never get closer than the polite stage. And that went on for over a decade. So I'm like, well, that family failed. Clearly, I'm not going to have family. I'm just alone. And things would reinforce that. So whatever happens through your childhood, you don't always have to excavate and understand where everything comes from, although it does happen in therapy. But those core beliefs stick with you. And when you are super triggered in the present, it's those core beliefs functioning. And as long as they aren't healed, then they can get triggered. And that's why the healing work is so important. Even if you don't figure out all the reasons, to me, the analysis is really secondary, because when things come up in the present, if you can heal those things, then you no longer have to analyze anything. And that's kind of the whole point of the work we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us then about your healing journey. What was helpful for you personally?
Oh my gosh. It's like a wandering piecemeal. There's been so many things. There's been certain, as I mentioned, for me, it's my healing journey is also a spiritual journey. And there's been some philosophies that have meant a lot to me personally. And I think that's why in therapy, I don't know, I think some people have a misconception that you don't do spiritual religious stuff in therapy, but that is part of who a person is, and the way they see things can be very powerful. So I don't recommend a specific path, because where people are at, different paths are really powerful. But that's always been something I've held on to, is spiritual books of anyone wiser than me, books of the sages. A lot of Buddhist writers share wisdom without any care for whether you're jumping on religion, because they just want people to be happy. And they have a lot of psychological wisdom. So a lot of Buddhist authors are a big influence. Some psychology authors are a big influence. And then when I was 25, I went to Shaolin, and I put this in my bio, but I was in Shaolin, China, and I was studying Kung Fu and Qigong. Does not sound super cool and exotic. It was interesting, but I didn't get good at meditation when I was in Shaolin, far from it. But I did start a serious practice, and that was at 25. And I had some insights like, wow, you need to follow the guidance you have in you. And it took me places. So I was studying, really trying to figure out this meditation thing kind of on my own. The teacher I had in Shaolin, well, the master was trying to teach us, but he would give us this long dissertation. He would be talking to all the students, and then the translator would translate from Chinese to English, and it'd be like 8 words. And then the master would speak eloquently, lengthy, and then 8 words. And at one point he pauses and he looks and kind of like looks hard at the translator, but what can you do? So I did my best. It's so funny.
So you're missing a lot of information, you think?
I did not get my deep training in China, although I tried like heck. So I had some books and I just decided to try it on my own. And, we were off the grid. We were in the mountain. We didn't have running water. We didn't have cell phones, and it was 2001 anyway. So I just spent a lot of room trying. And I was reading stuff and, empty your mind and all that, trying to work on that. And I was terrible at that. And so I came home after my month in Shaolin, and I tried other things, and I tried guided visualizations. And there was a healing author that I found very powerful, Brian Weiss, and I was trying his guided meditations. Oh, you're familiar. Lovely.
Yes, from other podcast people told me about him. Yeah.
Woo. Yeah. That was the first big influence for me. And it also gave me hope that therapy actually could help people, which years later I became a therapist. Mm-hmm. But I was doing guided visualizations is what I ended up really holding on to initially, because I tried some of the more traditional stuff. And I don't know if I have a little ADHD brain going on, but it was very difficult. But I was just plugging away at it for years. And then when I went to school to be a therapist, a lot of growth happened there. And it's like, if you think of a rainbow, just take one color. And these are the people that I can sympathize with and have compassion for without any judgment. And as the journey went, especially being a therapist, it's like allowing that rainbow to open up. And the types of people that I can feel that way and see and understand just expanded. I expanded. So, the journey's been an interesting thing, but I became a trauma therapist and started to understand how those core beliefs, remember that I'm alone, that popped up for me, interestingly, when I got my new family, which they're amazing, wonderful, the best that it's ever been. But even so, when anything would come up that was this, logically, I shouldn't be upset, but emotionally, I'm all triggered. And I would do my therapeutic mindfulness on myself, and it would always go back to I'm alone. Again, I'm alone, I'm alone. And so even trying to have a family that was closer, more intimate than I had ever had before with these more dysfunctional, distant families, I had to work on that I'm alone reaction so I wouldn't be alone. It's so crazy.
The paradox. Yeah.
Right. But when you're triggered and, I'm all alone in this, I'm doing everything, you're doing nothing, you're attacking me, all these reactions that we get. And so using therapeutic mindfulness to work through the I'm alone allowed me the intimacy that I've always wanted. And I learned that between all the years of meditation. So I'm jumping around a bit. Sorry, everybody. All the years of meditation. And as I grew as a therapist and I started seeing how the mind worked, and I started working with people with a lot more trauma than I've had, and seeing what works with healing, seeing what doesn't. And one thing I learned that really surprised me is that people can use mindfulness practices. Mindfulness practices are like mindfulness, grounding, meditation, guided visualization, all the mindfulness practices. You can use them to suppress emotion. So if I have a trauma client come in and I teach her a visualization, we're going to put you on the beach. You're so relaxed at the beach and you can see the waves and smell the salt air and feel the sun on your skin, all the things. And some people that don't have a lot of emotional regulation are amazed. They're just amazed at how calm and peaceful their mind can be. And they're like, wow, this is amazing. And they go home and they do it in between. And that's great. We're therapists. We like when our clients do homework. And then fast forward, and I had a few that did this. They were so adverse to feeling emotions that it actually stopped working. Because what happened now is when they felt bad about anything, then, oh my gosh, let me go to the beach. Okay, I can feel the sun on my skin, see the waves. And now anytime you feel bad, they're trying to push it away. So you can actually use it to avoid, but it's no longer mindfulness. because mindfulness requires non-judgment. And the moment you're judging this feeling as overwhelming, bad, unacceptable, you are no longer mindful. You're just avoiding.
Wow.
And it doesn't work. So what I did, and I use this on myself, I use this when I got divorced from my second family. Got divorced from a man, I guess, technically. When I got divorced, I used this as the emotions would rise. I would go into therapeutic mindfulness, and then it would come down again. And it would be like these waves of emotion. And I would jump into it and sit with them so quickly. And as they went, I'm 3 months outside of divorce. And I'm like, I feel like I've healed from 83% of this. Like there's kind of some long-term glitchy stuff I got to work on, but like the bulk of the hurt about him, what happened, how he treated, my core beliefs about it are not hurting me. And I was able to move on really quickly, because with therapeutic mindfulness, instead of running away, if I feel bad, you actually use mindfulness meditation to look directly at the pain, the hurt, the anger, the sadness, the anxiety.
How?
And how? That's,
yes.
Okay. So exciting. So exciting. So a basic way that the mind works, we have a few options when we are upset. Default options, you can swallow, you just stuff it down. We've talked a little bit about that. There's tons of ways to swallow. Okay. So we shouldn't swallow. That's bad. It just adds up. So we should go to our feelings, right? So let's face it. Let's face our feelings. And now a lot of times we end up wallowing, where your brain is just chatting on and going through the story, and you feel worse and worse and worse and worse. This part of the brain that does that wallowing thing or the analyzing thing, if I could just figure it out, right? But that part of the brain, if you notice what happens when you're wallowing and why you feel worse, every single thought is about why you should feel bad. In fact, not even should you feel bad, you should feel worse, because here's what they were thinking when they said that, and we just go down a rabbit hole.
Well, and if they were saying that, you must be really shitty.
Right. What a piece of crap I am. Oh my gosh. Here's all the reasons why I suck. Like, that's what it comes back to. Even if they're terrible, well, you know what? Other people have treated me this way. It must be me. Here's all the reasons why it's always happened. It's always going to happen. It's hopeless. I'm a piece of crap. I should just jump off a cliff. So that's kind of
or eat worms and die.
Ooh, that's so graphic, Karen. My goodness.
Well, it's a childhood rhyme. You didn't know about this worm thing?
I do. I
might as well go. Okay.
Nobody.
I won't sing because everybody will leave us. I won't sing. You're safe. Okay, but continue on. What you're saying is really important.
So
really.
By default, when we're emotional, our brain has strategies. Strategy 1, swallow, shove it down. Okay. I love this so much, you guys. If anyone wants to write it on a piece of paper, swallow, because you take away the S. Now we have wallow. Wallow is not good either. It just builds it up. But if you take away the W, you have allow.
Did you come up with that on your own?
I did. I'm so excited.
That is so good. I have to write this down for my group.
Yay. Although, yeah, you absolutely
can.
Swallow, wallow, allow.
It's so good.
Thank you.
You're a genius.
Oh.
Okay, go ahead. I'll stop interrupting.
No, it's so cute. The trick, wallow's the magic. Wrong one. Allow is the magic. But how do you allow? Oh, now I'm rhyming. Goodness gracious. How do you allow? That's a trick, because if you try to go into your feelings and allow it, this chatty brain starts speaking. It's crazy. So there actually is an answer to that. And the answer is to go to your body. I took a piece from Jim Knight's EMDR tools. He's a trauma therapist, has all these advanced tools. And there's this one little piece from this one tool he has that kind of, I don't know, just zinged in my brain. And I was like, oh, with this, you can go to your body by asking. So you know how feelings show up in your body. You clench your throat, heavy chest, tight neck and shoulders, queasy stomach, right? Pounding heart. squeezing hard. So we all experience these feelings, or I shouldn't say all, some people are disconnected, but most of us experience feelings in our body, and we have sayings for it. Oh, it was like a punch in the gut. Oh, I lost my breath. I couldn't breathe. So we have these things because your feelings are expressed in your body. So what you can do with allow is you can use questions to get into your body. If the feeling was somewhere, where would it be? Well, it would be in my chest. If it had a size, how big would it be? These are very abstract. It's very strange. People are like, what are you talking about? But I'm telling you, if you actually do it at the moment that you're upset, you will have an instinctual answer. I've had so many non-hippy dippy, weird, this isn't like a frou-frou hippie thing. I've had so many very logical people. I've had an accountant, like, this is so weird. What are you feeling? It's a cage around my ribs. It becomes very vivid for some people, but most everybody will feel something. So you ask the questions, and whatever impression comes up, you go with it. How big would it be? How is it, hot or cold? If it had a texture, what would it feel like to touch? If it had a color, what would it look like? And most of those have answers for most people. And once you're done describing all those body things, then they're super focused. And here's where you're allowed to allow is when you get that, you're out of the story and so focused on the physical feeling. And then the magic happens when I use what I call the allowing phrases. And I say, okay, let it be there. Open up to it. Give it all the space it needs. Let yourself be uncomfortable. One of my pop-out quotes in my book is, feelings are uncomfortable, not lethal. So
one of my clients describes feelings. She's so cute. And I'm going to mess it up, but something like they're icky, gicky, gooey, gross, like snot.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. But we all have snot sometimes.
Yes. Well, you think it's funny, but it's not. Okay, I'm done.
Oh, I can't believe you did that.
Oh man, just think about having therapy with me. Sometimes, some days I am on a roll. Anyway, yeah, so she might have, it is possible to have a very vivid stuff in your face. I haven't had anyone describe snot in their face, maybe in the stomach, like uncomfortable, swirly, yucky, gross. There's been some of those descriptions that come up. So that is one of the keys, that when we can get into describing the body with all those dimensions, it actually gets us really connected to what our emotions are screaming to tell us. And then it's like the moment of truth. Now that you feel it, now that you're connected, can you accept it, or do you need to run away? And if you can allow it, and it's uncomfortable, it really is, but if you can allow it, it flows up like a wave and then it washes away. It just dissipates. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm very deliberate in my book about certain extreme reactions. People with extreme traumas may need to work with someone through this. But for most people that can tolerate some emotion and who are functional in the world, most of them can do this process.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's extremely difficult for people to do who maybe turn to drugs for relief. That's, that intense, uncomfortable feeling is why many of us may overdrink or overeat or turn to drugs or pornography. Like, it's because we're trying to avoid that feeling, and just knowing that there's hope if you allow it to come up and process it, and allow it to just come up, and flow out of you, and how that can be healing. And you don't have to because when you do drugs or overeat or drink, I tell people, yeah, that helps, but it's a very temporary solution. Then you have two problems after, right?
Right.
You have the original trauma and then the addiction or the maladaptive behavior. Mm-hmm. So overall, not helpful.
Yeah. And for people that are really struggling to stay sober, they tend to need a lot more support, and there can be a whole lot of really heavy trauma. But again, if you have some emotional tolerance, say you're sober, but it's a struggle, say you're sober and you're still growing, say you're able to function. If you can do some emotions, you can practice this. You don't have to pull out the worst trauma of your life. You know, like I did the first time I practiced EMDR in class. I'm like, let's take the worst memory I've ever had. It involved a baseball bat, and it was bad. It was bad stuff, right? There was some violence there. I did see some violence growing up. So I'll just go straight to that, but you don't have to do that. You know, you can go to my boss raised their voice and I was shaking and frozen. I mean, you can go to, you know, everyday stuff, but you can slowly build up the tolerance to emotion. And I'll tell you, there are some people that, in spite of this being a really powerful tool, they still need me in therapy, but there are other people that just needed to learn what to do.
Yeah.
And once they know what to do, they'll see me a handful of times and then they'll be done with me. And that is the most exciting thing as a therapist. A good therapist loses their clients.
Yeah. Yep. They graduate.
Yes.
Because they have the tools to heal themselves. They just need to be told where they are and how to access them. Yeah.
I think a big part of it is getting out of the conscious mind. And one thing, actually, this might be really interesting for folks to know, especially if they're in therapy or working on stuff. When shame shows up, one of the very basic philosophical or thesis points to my book about what helps heal you and what doesn't help heal you, I say judgment blocks healing, and that's shame. Shame is the worst. That's the heaviest judgment and self-judgment. I don't deserve to heal. There's just so much there. But shame, guilt, any kind of judgment like this is too much for me. It's overwhelming. So judgment blocks healing. And I'll tell it to people in session again, judgment blocks healing, judgment blocks healing, judgment blocks healing. Self-compassion, or compassion just in general, compassion nurtures healing. And over time, I came to believe that the people that never healed were the ones that couldn't internalize or soak in my positive regard. I could see wonderful things in them all day long for over a year, and they wouldn't get better. This is when I was a younger therapist. I could see people not get better because they didn't believe it. I was just really nice. I mean, you know, it's not that they're decent. It's that I'm nice. It's like, So the funny thing about doing this process, because you're not in your story, you're in your body and you're focused on like a clenching fist in your throat or some feeling in your body, especially if it's weird, like a blue glob of gunk in your chest or a brick in your stomach. It's hard to feel shame about having a brick in your stomach. You know what I mean? If you get real focused, it's black, it's heavy, it's like 20 pounds, it's about this big, it's really cold. So they get all these descriptions about a physical feeling in the body. It's not shameful. Now, when you're thinking about the horrible thing that happened, if you're thinking about, I'll go with molestation because there's a lot of shame, suddenly all the shame comes up. But if it feels like a cage around your ribs, let's say, a cage is not shameful. It might be weird to feel a cage around your ribs when you know there's not one there, and uncomfortable with the breathing, but it's not deep personal shame. And that's why it's easier to allow it. And when you can allow it, it can heal. It is a magical process. I hope this gets out to so many people because it is so powerful and is the most powerful thing that I can give people that they can go do on their own without me. And that's the best part.
Yeah, because there's only one you.
I know, right?
In what state are you licensed in?
I'm licensed in Indiana.
So you can help the whole state of Indiana, maybe, if you get them in a form. But the rest of the country and the world, do you do any coaching as well to get to more people, or do you just
I haven't done coaching, honestly. So even since 2018, since before this book came out, because it just came out this month right now when we're recording being March of 2023. So even though the book just came out, I've had a wait list for almost the whole time I've been open. I don't have time to get to nearly everyone that comes to me. So that's not really a good way to get to me. What I'm hoping to do eventually, part of writing this book is because I knew that I could give people things they don't need me for, but that they can use to heal. And the other purpose, the other thing I I think would be really useful is if I do trainings, if I do workshops, if I do speaking. And that's what I'm open to doing more of, because I can reach more people. And I've done it too. I've had somebody in front of me at a workshop and had them go through the whole body mindfulness. She had a fear. It was an older woman who was going blind, and she had a lot of fear around living her life blind. And so that's what we did in front of a group of people. I've done it on a therapist in front of a group of people. So that would be something else that I could offer. But in terms of one-on-one, I can't even reach all the people that want me here from Indiana. So
I know I was joking about that because I ran into a similar issue. So what I'm trying to do is do less individual and trying to do like group coaching. So women from other states and countries can join it, virtual group to do some skills with. And we can talk a little more about that offline if you would like.
Yeah, you and me. Let's talk.
Yeah. Because there's a huge need. And as we know, COVID didn't help with the domestic violence issues, child abuse issues. A lot of people didn't have the respite of going to work or going to school that they had. So that was a tough time.
And anxiety was hard.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Now anxiety is declared an epidemic of the CDC. So,
oh, wow. I didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my gosh. I hope I can do this on a much wider scale, because anxiety is one of the big ones that a lot of people could hit with this.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll have to I'm having a summit in October. So I'd like you to be a speaker of that. And hopefully by October, maybe you can have some workshops to sell or, something, a course, because the way you're teaching, I think resonates with people. Like you're very playful. You do the metaphor thing, the body, people get that. They need more concrete tools to heal. And I think it'd be wonderful if you could offer that on a larger scale.
Yeah.
So I want to have a kick-ass summit.
Yeah, I've already had it developed because I've done it on smaller groups locally. And that's exactly what I'm thinking about doing. So yes, that would be amazing and fits right in line with where my soul feels like this needs to go. Because I have a tool that can heal more people without me present. And it sounds like you think like me, like practical. What can we do? Don't tell me a nice thing that sounds nice. Tell me what to do that will work. And
you heard me say it. You're like, move through the emotion. A lot of survivors, and myself included as a survivor, like, okay, that's wonderful. How? How do you do that?
That is my biggest pet peeve of speakers, and my biggest thing that I really am happy about with the book. It is so Therapeutic Mindfulness, a healing skill, not a coping skill, is the name of my book. And the funny thing is the process I describe by chapter 5. I give some background of the brain and how it works and swallow, wallow, allow. And by chapter 5, I tell you the process. So why is there 10 more chapters in the book? And it's because wisdom is simple. The process is simple. The brain, the resistance, the fear, that shit's complicated. So, you have like a few pages on chapter 5, how to do therapeutic mindfulness. And then on the resistance chapter, it's 26 pages, because our mind is desperately afraid, for a lot of us, desperately afraid, avoidant. And it's like peeling back, and you're a therapist, you'll understand layers of protection, but peeling back the layers of protection. But in my case, gently. I would never tear that stuff open. And for any trauma therapist, we know that's re-traumatizing.
We know
so
that, yeah.
If there is literal terror about going to a memory, you don't rip past the terror. You soothe the terror. You work with the terror. You sit with that. You allow it. And as the terror naturally feels calm, it's like a child having a nightmare that's shaking and you're holding the child. And as they soothe naturally, then you can say, what's been going on at school lately? Like you can go there, but not when they're in terror, so we have to gently soothe and heal and love on and give space to all those layers. And as they peel away, then we can start to getting to the deep stuff and start shifting those core things that make us react. So it really is exciting. I like the summit idea. That's exciting too.
Yeah. I liked what you said, and I hadn't thought of it in those words exactly, the difference between coping skills and healing skills. So I know I want to spend time thinking about that as well. So thank you for that terminology. But go ahead.
You're welcome. And if I can jump in and throw out a few things, because I don't want to downplay something that genuinely helps people. So let me just say, if I may, that coping skills have their use. If a very distressing thing happens and you have your child with you, you are going to shove your shit down. Okay, let's be real. And you're going to cope because the child needs to know that things will be okay. You know, they will be okay. But the child will look to you to see if they should be terrorized, by whatever happened, or they should be despairing or whatever huge reaction. So you cope. You take care of the child later, but later when they're in bed and you're alone and everything's okay, then what do? It's no longer time for coping skills. That's when you work on healing your heart. So to me, coping skills, short-term, they are not long-term in my opinion, but there are healing skills, and that's what this is about.
Yeah. An example of a coping skill I teach survivors is the importance of a self-care bag, which has all your little favorite things in, and it's meant to soothe, during a hard day. It's not going to cure you. It's not going to heal you, but it's just to offer you little pieces of soothing as you're trying to work through things. So if they're journaling, about a hard moment and need soothing. Okay. And I tell people, if you have an alcohol problem, you're not allowed to have those little bottles in there. If you got a food addiction, you're not putting Kit Kats in your bag. So it's got to be healthy stuff like, silly putty or Play-Doh or essential oils, things that, can help and soothe, but maybe doesn't mean they're a magic cure-all per se.
Right. And not for nothing, to do really hard emotional work, I feel like there's emotional energy that it takes. So, and in the very end of the book, I talk about like the balance between positive psychology stuff and therapeutic mindfulness, or doing the shadow work, as some people will call it. And I feel like we have to fill the tank. So you don't have to walk with your trauma 24/7, so you're doing the work. You can take a time out of your day or out of your week aside and do the heavy, hard stuff. And then you can go back to your week and let's do all the positive stuff and fill up the tank, so we have energy to keep doing it. Yeah. So we don't have to walk around like a martyr. We can take care of ourselves. Definitely. And that's not avoiding. I think your brain knows, like if you wait for a week until therapy, until you have a therapeutic mindfulness session, until whatever, your brain knows that you're doing the work. If you wait for 6 months, your brain says, all right, now it's time for this to push through, whether you're coping or not.
Yeah. Well said. Okay, so you have one book. Your first book is out, just came out. Any plans to write another book, or are you good?
Because it's not just ideas, because it's application, and I think it's so important. I hope you can hear, but I'm really driven to get the word out and teach this, that I don't have any immediate plans for another book. To me, this is about getting the word out, whether it's podcasting, tours, workshops, teaching it. I would rather have a series of YouTube videos of me doing workshops all over the place where I show what it looks like online. Like that, to me, would get the tool in people's hands. In the back of my mind, I'm considering going more in depth on self-compassion and mindsets that help with self-compassion. I do have a self-compassion chapter in my book that's also quite lengthy. It's really, because judgment blocks healing, we need to have mindsets that help us not judge. And so there's a lot about that. So that's a possibility. But right now, it really is not about banging out books, but spreading this message. So that's where I'm focused for the foreseeable future.
Awesome. So if people that want to keep you on their radar, is the best thing to do right now is simply buy the book? Or do you have social media channel that you want to share with people, or both, of course?
Sure. Yeah. The book, Therapeutic Mindfulness, is on Amazon. Social media, I do have Facebook. So it's facebook.com/calm to happy, CALMTO HAPPY, Calm to Happy. Or you can look up the Happiness Project Fort Wayne, because the Happiness Project brings up a book of a lady who thought of it before I did, but that's my practice name. So Facebook/Calm to Happy. The other way, so if I do anything significant like events or speaking or something like that, I'll put it on there. Or if you want to contact me for speaking events, you can go on the Facebook or you go to my webpage, ruthfearnow.com. Fear Now is spelled how it sounds. FEAR, be afraid, NOW, right now. Be afraid now correctly so you cannot be afraid later.
Yeah. What a way to use your name for good. I always say, I'm not one of those Karens that you read about. I am caring. CARING.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Well, Ruth, it was a pleasure having you on our show today. You have some really practical wisdom for people, and people really need practical. Too much fancy phrasing isn't helpful, and you're direct and to the point. And I think that's really helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really, really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate it.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.